Hey, Ohio, it is August 20th, 2025. Tonight, Vivek Ramaswamy is holding this event called The Future of Education in Ohio. And honestly, for Ohio Education, who's a wonderful advocacy group for education in our state, had a post, and they mentioned that none of the panelists at this event actually are involved in public schools, which is so ridiculous given 90% of K through 12 kids are educated in the public school system in the state of Ohio. No, the panelists include people that are connected to Project 2025, that would love to privatize all schools in our state, that would love to inject some Christian nationalism in our school system, et cetera, et cetera. And this is on the heels of our state legislature, our Republican-led state legislature, passing a budget recently that gave $2.5 billion in universal vouchers to private schools in this state, while cutting hundreds of millions of dollars in public school funding, right? And I hear people say, like, whenever I bring this up, I'll see in posts, people will be like, well, we should be giving people a choice because private school outcomes are better, or academically they do better. And that is actually not true. I want everybody to listen to this.
The Inquirer analyzed more than 150 cities in Ohio, comparing academic performance in select public districts within the city to private schools within the same community. The data examined was from the 2017-18 and 2018-19 school years. In 134 of the 150 cities, the public school district examined outperformed the collective scores from the private schools in their city. Some districts outperformed private schools narrowly, others decisively. 5 of the 8 largest districts in Ohio fared better academically than the collective private schools in each city. But since 2018, the state deducted a combined $190 million from those 5 districts and sent those funds to private schools through the Ed Choice and Cleveland voucher programs. The funds went to some private schools that the large public districts matched or outperformed. During the same period across Ohio, the state deducted more than $400 million from public districts under the voucher programs and shifted the money to private schools.
So that is a little old, right? So the number is way higher now. Like I said, $2.5 billion in our voucher program now going to private schools, right? And hundreds of millions of dollars being taken away from our public schools. And with data, we know that academic performance, academic outcomes are actually not better for these private schools than our public schools, which is phenomenal given we have been underfunding public education in the state through our state budget for decades under Republican leadership, right? So don't believe people when they tell you, well, the private school always has better outcomes. That is not true. Also, the accountability. So there's no accountability in how this private voucher money is being spent. And I will often hear people say, well, there's no accountability in how public schools are spending their money. And that is false. That is false because constituents in a school district, right, get to vote on members of a school board. Okay, you go to the ballot, you vote for members of your school board who are in part in charge of your budget, and they hold public meetings, right, where you can go listen to them, and it is very transparent, their budget, right? When is the last time you got to vote for a school board member for a private school in your area that your kid didn't attend? Or go to a meeting, a private school meeting where they talked about how they were going to spend your taxpayer dollars that is going to the voucher program. When was the last time that happened? It didn't happen because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There's no accountability there, right? And above and beyond that, public schools are monitored and audited way, way more than private schools in our state. There is a whole system by which they track where our taxpayer dollars go to our state budget and then go to public schools. There is auditing that happens there that tracks where that money is being spent. There are state report cards for our public schools that includes financial information about how they spent that money. That does not happen for private schools. So there is no accountability. And we saw, if anybody paid attention to this in Florida, where they also have a universal voucher program, they found out that a lot of voucher money was being spent on tickets to Disney World. Yes, tickets to Disney World. That is how they were spending taxpayer dollars. So, and we see in Arizona now that has been a huge proponent of expanding vouchers and school choice, that public schools are closing. They're suffering, right? Because they are taking money from public schools and putting it to private schools. And with no accountability, like I said, and how that money is being spent. And we just saw this story broke about the busing, right? The busing in Ohio, our public school systems are taxed with busing private and charter school students, okay? If they don't, they get fined. So what happens is in some districts, public school students have been told now, sorry, we can't bus you because we don't have enough buses or bus drivers because we have to take the private and charter kids to school, right? That is not okay. This is not fair. And if you're in somewhere like a rural area, right, where you don't have a private school around you, your public school is maybe the only school around you, how is it fair that your taxpayer dollars are going to subsidize somebody else's private school education hours away with no accountability in how that money is spent? And now we know most of the money in the private school voucher program in Ohio is actually going to well-off families who are already enrolled in private schools. So this was not about school choice, right? This is about subsidizing private school education here. But that's not fair to kids in a rural community where they don't have a private school. They don't have a choice, right? And so everybody needs to speak out about this because it is bananas. It is bananas how our money is being spent on these private schools with no accountability. And again, if anybody says, well, they do better academically, that's not true. Now you can tell them, no, actually, that's not true. That's false. And hold your lawmakers accountable because it's the Republicans that have held the trifecta in our state house that continue to make these poor decisions because they would love nothing more than to privatize all education here, specifically private religious education, because they want to push their conservative Christian agenda on every school student, which is hilarious because they always accuse, public schools of indoctrinating, when that is exactly what they want to do here with your taxpayer dollars. So that's it. Speak out, hold your lawmakers accountable, and tell them no more money for private schools, that our public schools come first. And it's unconstitutional that now we are funding two school systems in the state of Ohio.